If, like me, you're middle-aged, overweight, you've got high blood pressure, pre-diabetes, and a prostate bigger than your wife's handbag, then you need one of these. It's an e-bike, and this one's made by a company called Cube. A lot of people ask me, what's the point of a bicycle you don't have to pedal? So you don't get any exercise. It's probably the single biggest misunderstanding about e-bikes. In fact, you do have to pedal them. All the battery does is help you along, up to 15.5 miles an hour, after which you're on your own. Now, unless you're Dutch or from Norfolk, you'll find that the extra push from the battery really transforms cycling. I mean, there's nothing worse than going up a 1-in-1 hill in first gear on a normal bike with your legs going like egg beaters, only to find you're being overtaken on the outside by a granny on a Zimmer frame. An e-bike essentially flattens out the hills, making them much more bearable. And there's another advantage of e-bikes. There's no need to dress up in lycra, because you're not going to go any faster. That's especially good news for those of us who look about 4 months pregnant in tight clothing. Not just that, but you're going to have huge amounts of fun pedalling your way past the lycrists as they sweat their way up the hills. Now, I've had this bike for about a year now, and in that time the trip computer tells me I've done 664 miles, which is about the distance from my house to a place called Tongue on the north coast of Scotland. Over a similar period of time on my old unpowered bike, I probably didn't do much more than about 50 miles. Talking of the trip computer, it also tells you how far you've travelled since you last reset it, the time, the maximum speed you've ever been, your average speed since you've had the bike, your trip time, and your remaining range. There are 4 power settings: Eco, Touring, Sport and Turbo. All slightly daft names. Eco's useless and there's nothing turbo about it. They should have called the power settings Flat, Hilly and Steep, because that's how you'll end up using them. On this bike, I think I normally get about 30 to 40 miles out of one charge. It does depend on the power setting I use and how many hills I've climbed. Either way, it's more than enough to avoid range anxiety. By the way, you really don't want to run out of battery on one of these things. They're a lot heavier than normal bikes, and you really notice that extra weight if you try and ride it unpowered, even on the flat. If that's tempted you to go out and buy an e-bike, here are a few things you might like to think about. I'd recommend you take a look at Cube. They're extremely well made, and I found this one very reliable. Over the year, all I've had to do is pump up the tyres from time to time and put a bit of oil on the chain. This model is no longer made, but I think the equivalent is the Touring Hybrid 1400, which costs £1,599. Whichever bike you choose though, it's worth having front suspension to smooth your ride over the potholes. Disc brakes are really worth having too, as they're much smoother and you can brake harder with more confidence that you're not going to end up going arse over tit. All in all though, the best part of £1,600 is a lot of money for a bike, but I'd rather pay that for one I use all the time than 700 quid for one that just sits in the shed. If you found this helpful, do subscribe. Otherwise, I've been Arlo Guthrie, and until the next time, bye bye.